are you doing today?
I'm doing well. How about you?
I'm actually doing okay, not too bad. I did want to talk about our last podcast, and I know we found it thoroughly entertaining in every way, shape, or form.
Very self-satisfied, yes.
So self-satisfied. I do not believe our students enjoyed our intro nearly as much as we did.
What, is this like 10 seconds of like fart sounds?
You know, you try to make it appealing to high school students, and they just do not appreciate the effort that you make.
It was a big hit with my 6-year-old daughter.
Oh, my son loved it.
Yeah.
I think he loved it and was horrified at the same time. And at one point he did ask me, "Are you really going to play this for your students?" And I said, "Of course I am." And I think that's where the horror came in. But, you know, you got to do what you got to do to make history interesting.
My kid was a little more innocent. When she heard the fart sound, then she said, "Say, excuse me, Daddy."
That's awesome.
I guess we're also on the subject of King Cholera, and I did talk to a couple students, and we genuinely want to apologize for blowing out anybody's AirPods with the volume on that fart sound. But hey, that's the price of good radio.
I see you're continuing on with our cholera puns with the idea of blowout and cholera at the same time.
Unintentional pun.
Yeah, that's what
promise
yeah.
you.
So what's on our agenda today?
Well, we just finished up the Industrial Revolution, and I wanted to kind of get into this topic of Europe kind of flexing on the world and moving outside of the continent, because we've been really Atlantic-centric and Eurocentric, but this is a world history podcast, and there's a lot of other stuff going on. And it also coincides with this time period where the Europeans start to look out into the world again. So I thought we could tackle this topic of imperialism.
Oh, nice.
Yeah. And I know you know a lot about imperialism. And, you know, there's some key differences between imperialism in the 19th century and colonialism, which we saw in the time of the setting up of the Spanish Empire and all that sort of stuff. So I figured you could maybe walk us through the 4 different parts or types of imperialism that exist and what they are overall.
Yeah. First off, I think we need to define imperialism, and it's the idea that one country is going to take over another country for their benefit. It's the idea that you go in, you take over someone else's territory, and you exploit the people and the resources for your individual country's gain. And so that's what we're really going to see in the latter half of the 19th, early part of the 20th. Actually, we still see it today.
Yeah,
but, yeah.
Unfortunately, places like China are practicing a new form of imperialism in Africa, and I think we can get into that. So it sounds like this is going to be a big multi-part podcast, right?
Oh, yeah. Imperialism is not going to be able to be done in one shot.
All right.
So there are 4 major aspects to imperialism, or 4 major causes. We have economic causes, and then political causes, and social causes, and religious causes.
Okay.
And so for most of the imperialism we're going to talk about in this series, we're going to see a combination of anywhere from like 1 to all 4 causes as the reasons that Europeans go over and take over other countries.
Okay, and that's what's going to distinguish this from colonialism, which was a single-shot sort of idea.
Yeah, and colonialism is a little bit different because, when you look at the Latin American colonies, because there were so many Europeans who went over there, right, and so many Native Americans had died. When you look at South America, it really was predominantly controlled by and populated by the Spanish.
Yes.
And so that's just having Spain Part 2 on the other side of the ocean.
Okay.
That's you're not really dealing with a whole lot of indigenous population anymore because they've died off.
They're dead.
And then with North America, even though they were a colony of Britain kind of left them alone.
Right,
and
that charter system and the exportation of different religions. And so we're not going to see like mini-me versions of these countries anymore. This is going to be kind of a takeover.
Oh, yeah, this is a complete takeover. And colonialism wasn't really a complete takeover. Right. Well, I mean, it kind of was, but it wasn't really a takeover. But now we actually have European countries going to non-European countries and completely taking them over for the advantage of Britain or France or whoever it may be.
This is like what's it, The Bug's Life, when all those locusts are flying in and they take all the resources from the ants. Have you seen that movie?
Yeah, I think like A Bug's Life. Yeah.
Yeah.
I think like early on in The Bug's Life, when all the bugs had to produce the seeds and give them to Chopper or whatever his name was.
The big grasshopper that was
bug.
Yeah.
That would be a great example of mercantilism.
Okay.
Right? But if Chopper and his, squad of goons came over and actually took over the bug's colony and took over political control and that way that would be imperialism. Does that make sense?
All right. So for the record, we have copyrighted that. That's Bug Life 2 from Legacy High School. That's copyrighted. So don't try to take our ideas, you pirates. All right.
I would definitely recommend go look at Bug's Life. Watch the early part of Bug's Life when they're all gathering seeds for the big nasty, what are they, grasshoppers?
I think they're grasshoppers.
Yeah, that's a great example of mercantilism. And then at the end of the movie, when Chopper and his grasshoppers are going to come over and take over the colony completely, that is again a great example of imperialism.
All right, cool. So let's get into this thing. Let's just start right off the top. The one that makes the most sense with the Industrial Revolution having occurred. Let's talk about economic imperialism.
Yeah, with the Industrial Revolution, and we'll use Britain as a case study because they were the first to industrialize.
Yeah.
What ends up happening is those resources that they were so rich in at the beginning of the Industrial Revolution, coal, cheap cotton from the American colonies, and iron, they're running out of those resources. Those are finite resources. Like
small island, not a lot. Yeah.
And so if they want to continue the industrial process, which they do because they're making bank with it, they've got to find a way to gain access to those resources again.
Okay.
And that, like, for Britain to try to get raw cotton again, if you think about the American Revolution and then the War of 1812, there is not a snowball's chance that the United States is going to sell any cotton to Britain.
Turns out the United States was a little angry that the White Mansion got burned down by the
who
British.
Would have thought?
It gave us a pretty cool song, though.
You know, I'll be honest with you. I really thought Britain would have quit after 1776.
Yeah, well, they don't give up. They're tenacious. They are tenacious people.
Kudos to that, though, because part of the reason the Nazis weren't able to take over all of Europe was because of the British tenacity. So, yeah.
Fight them on the beaches. We'll fight them in the lanes. That's a horrible Winston Churchill.
That really
was bad.
Was.
I'll work on it.
And so, getting back to our story, England's going to have to go elsewhere to find the natural resources they need to continue the industrial process, because they're really one of two major nations at the time who are industrialized. So everybody else is buying products from them. The other one being obviously the United States.
Right.
And so one of the first places that England goes to because of economic imperialism is India.
Okay.
And students, as you should know, India has always been one of the world's largest producers of raw cotton, and they were also tremendous producers of cotton textiles. And so by Britain going over and taking over India around 1858, not only have they guaranteed themselves a very steady, cheap supply of raw cotton, they've gotten rid of their biggest competitor as well.
Yeah. So that's a smart move. Now, I'm going to imagine the Mughals are not just going to let the British come in. So that probably opens up the second type of imperialism, which is going to be political imperialism.
Yeah. And the Mughals, like, in all fairness, poor Mughals, but they had been declining for a while, and the Portuguese being there in India early on didn't help. But after what ends up happening is the Mughals slowly but surely lose power. The power ends up resting with the Nawabs, the princes of the Indian states, as they break apart. But eventually the British government is going to come over completely and take over the political system in India. And so they're going to remake India more in like a British image, a very godlike complex, obviously.
Setting up shop, like, that makes sense. Okay.
Laws are going to be created by British people to benefit British interests, even though it's a government that's based in India.
Okay, so you've got the cotton being harvested. You've got a British pseudo-government being put, not pseudo-government, like true government being put in place. But it's not in Britain, it's in India now.
Right.
And we know that when people are on the move, one of the things they bring with them is their cultural values and their social values. And so that gets us into the last two pieces that you were talking about, cultural imperialism and this religious orientation that can go along with imperialism as well. So let's start with the cultural piece.
Yeah, I think what ends up happening is when India becomes, the crown jewel in the British throne, and the British Raj starts and Britain has complete control over India, a lot of British citizens head to India because they see more economic opportunity over there that they wouldn't have access to in England. And so you get this huge influx of British citizens into India, which technically now is a part of England, and they bring their cultural beliefs with them, whether it's Christianity, whether it's wearing a three-piece suit, whether it's eating with a fork, whatever it may be. And that comes to be deemed as socially acceptable in India, to the complete disregard of Indian customs that have existed for thousands of years.
And we've seen this before in the New World, where we saw Christianity being something that was imported by the Spanish and being taught to Amerindian populations as well. So we've seen some of this patterning, but all of this is happening this is like a convergence, a perfect storm of all of these different factors in India that's going to lead to this new model for taking over.
Yeah, I mean, it's gonna change Indian political systems, Indian economy. It's gonna change Indian culture. And I mean, really, I think the British, had they been able to do it, they would have truly remade India to be Britain Part 2, kind of like what Spain did in the New World.
Yeah, okay, that makes a lot of sense. And knowing world history, we know that this is going to be successful. And so it's a copycat world. And if the British are successful in setting up a real, true imperial state in India, other countries are going to probably look to do the same. But here's the problem. The Atlantic world is off limits, right? It's a no-no because the Latin American revolutions were successful. The United States is going to be calling the shot in the Western Hemisphere by the end of the century. So where else do other up-and-coming European countries go to copycat?
Yeah, well, I think Britain actually gets another step on the journey before the other European nations actually catch up, because Britain's going to also head to Egypt, another huge cotton producer, and they're going to do the same thing in Egypt that they did in India. So they really corner the market on textile production.
So we're in two regions now too. So we're in India and Southern Asia, and then we're in the Middle East now.
Right.
And so cotton, is cordoned off. They got it.
Yeah. And I think then what ends up happening is the European countries see this and they're like, oh my God, we want to get in on the game too. Where should we go? And there's a couple of different interesting aspects to this. Again, Britain is not done with the imperialism game. In fact, they excel at the game. I mean, we've heard it, the sun never sets on the British Empire.
Right.
That's because at any time of the day, the sun is always up on at least one part of the British Empire. So Britain's going to continue, and they're going to actually head to China. Not necessarily for raw materials, but for markets, because they are just industrially producing so much that they need more and more people to buy it. And I don't want to get too much into China right now because it's a fascinating story.
I think they're going to love it when they hear it.
Needless to say, Britain continues to be successful. And then after that, it really leaves only one other kind of untouched place on the planet where people can grab a ton of natural resources and markets, and that's Africa.
And we have not talked a lot about Africa since the Salt Road. There's the potential for ample amounts of resources, aren't there?
Yeah, I think students sometimes think of Africa, the continent, as a desert, right? They see the Saharan desert and they're like, oh, all of Africa is like that, and it's not.
No.
We have rainforests, we have alluvial plains, we have all kinds of stuff going on, a tremendous amount of resources, and it's been basically untouched territory due to the Europeans simply not knowing how to geographically get into Africa, disease, which we'll talk about a little bit later. And so what will end up happening at the end of the 19th century is we are going to see a European land and power grab throughout Africa.
So this is good. This is it. So the British set up the model. And I know we said that this is going to be Europe flexes on the world, but really at the beginning it's England flexes on everybody.
Oh, yeah.
And then the other Europeans are like, hey, we want in on this thing. And they turn their eyes to the last remaining prize. That's going to be Africa. And I know I don't want to get too far into our next episode, but the technology pieces like the steam engine and the industrial capacities that have been put in place in Europe are going to make it possible to penetrate the impenetrable continent. And there's this other piece of the Africans in some way, shape, or form have been conditioned to at least accept Europeans in their midst because of the slave trade. And so there's this tremendous amount of like opportunity, and what we're going to find is that bad things are going to happen.
What is going to end up happening is Europe is going to use, we'll talk about it in the next episode, a different type of imperialism or attitude that they're going to bring into Africa. And unfortunately, at least for the African citizens, it decimates the continent.
Man, so this is, like we said, we talked about that whole idea of the bug's life and using that analogy. In this scenario, the grasshoppers win, not the ants.
Yeah, the grasshoppers will totally win. At the end of the movie, Flick, is that his name? The ant?
I think so.
Flick or Flex or something like that.
I think let's go with Flex for fair use, like copyright purposes.
Flex is not going to win this battle.
All right.
Yeah, not at all.
Okay, so we've got cotton coming out of Egypt. We got cotton coming out of India. We've got Africa and all its ample resources. resources. We've got palm oil, as we'll see, coming out of Southeast Asia. There's all these different resources. Everybody's got something that they want. I thought we'd end this because it's us, and we started at the top of the episode talking about scat and scatological humor. I thought we could end on a nice little America's in the colonial game too sort of story, if that's okay with you.
Oh yeah. And for our, awesome listeners, scat is just another name for poop.
I'm trying to class it up here.
We are never going to get away from this.
It is world history. The history of the world is number 2. So there's that part of it. So the United States, we talked about, they set up all that shop in the Western Hemisphere, and they don't have global reach yet. One of the things that's just an awesome thing to think about when we think about resources necessary for the modern world is that the United States was trying to corner the farming game at the middle part and ending part of the 19th century. And so they're trying to grow huge amounts of crops as quickly as possible because they want to sell them to European markets.
So like Britain was, industrializing cotton, where was the United States industrializing farm production, like crops?
It kind of was in a way. There's these huge advancements in farming technologies that happened in the United States. There's a better understanding of how to create hybridized crops, and then there's just the geographical, just awesomeness of the Great Plains and what that means for farming.
Right.
But the problem is that this predates modern fertilizers. And so we don't have nitrogenized soil, and we don't have all that sort of stuff. So the United States needs to find a way to keep this industrialized farming machine chugging down the tracks.
God, I know where you're going.
You know where
this.
I'm going. So the United States sends out these boats down into the Caribbean and into northern sections of South America, and they start to corner the market on a resource that literally nobody else in the world wanted: bat guano.
And guano, obviously, but for
dookie.
students, it's poop,
it's
right?
Dookie. It's like the bats eat up all the fruit, and then they create this awesomely concentrated fruit paste that they poop out into these caves. And if you've ever been into some of these subterranean caves or seen pictures of them, there's literally mountains of bat poop.
Okay, I'm going to actually tell a funny story here. First of all, gross, but hey, way to use it for fertilizer. I was in Austin this summer, and one of the major bridges in Austin, they have millions of bats that fly into the bridge, because they have little enclaves in the bridge, little tunnels, and they fly into the bridge in the morning and they fly out of the bridge at night. So I went on with my son. I went on a little kayak tour, and so we kayaked down the river and we parked ourselves under the bridge because they said, hey, at a certain time of night the bats will come out, and just millions of bats coming out. And we were super excited about it, and we had put no thought process in what could possibly happen when millions of bats fly over you. So we're sitting in the kayaks, and it's like dusk, right? And all of a sudden the bats come out, and it's really cool. It's really neat to see. And my son and I are like, ooh, ah. And then all of a sudden you start feeling things drop on you.
It's raining.
And it is not raining in Austin, Texas in the middle of the summer, just to let you know. And so I start looking at my shirt, and there's these little yellow drops and these little brown drops. I'm like, what is this? And my son turns around, he's like, Mom, it's bat shit. Excuse my language, but honest to God, he was so flabbergasted, and it's disgusting. Because we're talking thousands of bats at a time, constantly flying out. It was disgusting.
Now imagine filling up the cargo holds of huge container ships, steamships, and bringing this back to the United States. And then American politicians and businessmen and farmers and everybody's like, oh man, we've got it. We've got the magic elixir. We've got the solution to all of our problems. We just need more poop, right? So when we think about imperialism, maybe it's just a good analogy for you is it's just kind of a load of crap.
Oh, well done, Mr.
That?
Breen. What a way to end it. Nice job. High five.
That's
there.
a high five for sure.
So next time, ladies and gentlemen, we are going to get a little bit deeper into imperialism, and there is no humor in the next episode whatsoever.
No.
It's actually pretty dark, pretty deep, and it's super, super upsetting, but it's actually really, really important to know in terms of understanding the true impact of imperialism, not on the Europeans, but on the people they actually take over.
Absolutely. And so next week, like we said, we'll bring our serious faces in for this one, and we'll start to delve into part 2 of our imperialism series. All right. And that one's going to be the rubber terror.
Yeah, it's going to be really bad. But as always, thanks again for listening to Storytime with the Histress. I'm Miss Dumont.
Matt Maureen.
We'll see you next time.
All right.